we're going to start 6.2 dividing polynomials, day one. The first part one of this is not the most important. Part two, once we get down here, very, very, very important. You're going to see that pretty much for the remainder of the school year, on and off. Okay, but the first part shouldn't seem too crazy. All we're doing is dividing a polynomial by a monomial. So remember, polynomials are multiple terms, more than one, where a monomial is just one term. So when you have a poly divided by a mono, all you do is you take all of the numerator terms and you divide them each separately by the denominator. So we're taking 15y to the third divided by 3y plus 6y squared divided by 3y, and then 3y divided by 3y. Okay, and then we treat each one separate. So if we focus on this one, 15 divided by 3 is 5. And then y to the third over y, it's really 3 minus 1, which is 2. And it goes where the bigger one's at, which is in the numerator. If you look at the second one, 6 divided by 3 is 2. And then y squared divided by y gives me 1y in the numerator, because 2 minus 1 is 1. And it goes where the bigger one's at. On the next one, we can see that both of these cancel, but we have to have something as a placeholder, so we need to write a 1. So we would do the same process in number 2. 6x to the fourth, y to the third over 3xy plus 12x to the third, y squared over 3xy, and then minus 18x squared y over 3xy. At this point, again, we're going to take each piece. So the first one, 6 divided by 3 is 2. X to the fourth minus divided by x to the first, or 4 minus 1 is 3. It goes where the bigger one is. And then we have y to the third over y, which gives me y squared. Next one, 12 divided by 3 is 4. X to the third over x becomes x squared. Y squared over y becomes y. And then our last one, 18 divided by 3 is 6. X squared over x is just x, and the y's end up canceling. If we can combine like terms, we should, but in this case, none of these are. So go ahead and try number 3 on your own. I would pause the video really quick. All right, so again, we take each piece, and you don't have to write it out like this. I find that it's super easy to make mistakes if you don't just write it out. A lot of people just make small mental errors when they do that. Okay, so 5 divided by 5 cancels. You're left with a. B goes away. On the next one, you get a positive 3, well, a negative 3, sorry. A's cancel. You're left with b squared. And on the last one, you have 2, and then a squared, b to the third. Now, there are times where you'll have something like x over x squared, right? So know that that just means there's going to be an x in the denominator. They don't have to have stuff that always gets rid of every fraction like these ones do. Okay, you just simplify each piece. All right, so this is the super crucial part, okay? Synthetic division is something you will use for a really long time, okay? So first you want to, basically you're taking the opposite sign of the binomial. Okay, so the very first thing we're going to do on number 4, in a little box over here, we're going to put a 3 because it says minus 3, so we're going to put just a 3. Our second step is to write out the coefficients. Okay, so we are going to take the 2, the negative 5, and the negative 4 and just write it out. All right, so then I make like these railroad tracks here. It helps me in a second, okay? So next we're going to drop down the first number. Okay, so we're going to take the 2 and drop it down, okay? And the last rule is below the line, you multiply. Above the line, you add. Okay, so we drop that down. So we're going to focus this -3. So we're going to take -3 times 2, which gives me 6. So now we are above the line, so we are going to add these. So -5 plus 6 gives me 1. And then we multiply. 3 times 1 is 3. Okay, so now we have -4 plus 3, which gives me -1. Now the reason why we set it up this way is because this ends up being our remainder, okay? So when we divide these, we're essentially taking out something from here, okay? We're factoring it out, essentially. So if this starts as an x squared, that means that once we take away something with an x, this 1x gets taken away here as well, okay? So what I mean by that is, if this is x squared, our first term is just going to be an x. Whatever this degree is, we are subtracting 1, okay? So if it starts off as 2, then our answer is going to have 1. So we have 1, and then we would have none, okay, because we just keep working our way down. This remainder, we just write over what we are dividing by. We just take it and we copy it down. Okay, so let's look at the next one then. On this next one, we start off with our first step, which is the opposite sign of the binomial. Okay, so what we're dividing by. So we have -3 instead of a +3. And then we're going to copy down the coefficients. So we have 4, -5, and +3. And we're going to draw our lines. We are going to drop down the first number, and then we're just going to multiply and add over and over again. So -3 times 4 is -12. -12 plus -5 is -17. And -3 times 17 ends up giving us a 51. And then we're going to add 51 plus 3, which gives me 54. Again, we started with a squared, so our first one is just going to be x to the first, or just x. We always subtract 1. And then it's going to be -17, and then 54 is our remainder. You're not always going to get a remainder. In fact, in your homework tonight, I don't think that you're going to have very many at all that have remainders, if at all. All right, so we are going to look at number 6. There's something different about this, and we need to make sure we pay attention to this as we move forward. If you notice on these compared to the other ones, right, it does start with x to the 4th, okay? And as well as it's starting with x to the 4th, which is higher than normal, we're also missing an x squared, okay? As we move forward, we need to pay attention to making sure that we have everything accounted. Okay, and we'll talk about what that means in a second. So we're going to start the process again by focusing on the x plus 2. So we are going to use -2 because it's always the opposite. Now when we're writing it out, we're going to have a 3, 4, then a 0, a -5, and a -8. Now, I have the 0 there as in place of the x squared. If there isn't one, that means that there would be a 0 in front of it. So we're going to drop down our first number. We have 3. 3 times -2 is -6. So we get -2 when we add them. -2 times -2 is a +4. 0 plus 4 is 4. Then times -2, which is -8. Add these two, which gives me -13. Multiply to give me a +26. And then add these two to get 18. So now, instead of starting off with our answer as 3x squared, right? It's not, or sorry, as 3x. Again, it is one less than where we started. So we started with to the fourth, so this will be to the third. So minus 2x squared, or x minus 13. And that 18 is a remainder. On number 7, same thing is happening. We are missing one term, right? We are missing the y. So first we're going to take the opposite sign here, so a negative 2. So we have 1, negative 1, 0, negative 6. So we drop down our negative 1, or sorry, positive 1, and we multiply to get negative 2, add, get a positive 3, multiply, get a negative 6, add, and it stays negative 6, multiply, positive 12, add, and we get a positive 6. Now if we rewrite it, it's going to be x squared plus 3x minus 6, and then 6 over y. Again, I started with x squared because it's always one less than the original one we started with.